I was standing in my kitchen, halfway through pouring my second cup of coffee, when the lawyer called. The steam was still rising from the mug. I remember that detail because I watched it while he talked, while my hand stayed frozen on the pot handle. He asked if I'd received the notice about my grandmother's estate distribution. I told him I hadn't received anything. There was a pause. Then he said, "According to the will we have on file, you're not listed as a beneficiary. My grandmother raised me. She paid for my college when my parents couldn't. We spoke every Sunday for 20 years without fail. And according to a document dated 6 months before her death, I didn't exist." I set the coffee pot down, turned off the burner, and walked to my office. My hands were steady. I'd expected them to shake, but there was nothing. Just the sound of my breathing and the tick of the wall clock she'd given me at graduation. I unlocked the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet and pulled out a manila envelope she'd given me 4 years earlier. Inside was her will. The real one. Signed, notarized, and witnessed by her longtime attorney, George Brennan. She'd handed it to me on a Tuesday afternoon in March. We were sitting in her garden. The magnolias were blooming. She said, "Keep this somewhere safe. I don't trust your Aunt Carol around important papers." I'd laughed. I thought she was being paranoid. I wasn't laughing anymore. I didn't make a scene. I didn't send angry texts or show up at anyone's door. I scheduled an appointment with a lawyer, made 3 phone calls, and waited. Because the thing about having the truth in your hands is that you don't need to shout. You just need to know when to speak. My grandmother died on October 12th. She was 84 and had been fighting lung cancer for 18 months, but her mind stayed sharp until the end. I'd visited her twice a week during her final year. She'd call at exactly 3 p.m. every Sunday. We'd talk about books mostly. Sometimes 10 minutes. Sometimes an hour. But we never missed a Sunday. Not once. Even during chemo, when she was exhausted, when her voice was barely above a whisper, she'd call. She had 3 children. My mother was the youngest. But it was Carol, my father's sister, my aunt by marriage, who lived 20 minutes away in Riverside and started spending more time at Grandma's house once the diagnosis came. Carol had a way of making herself indispensable. She'd show up with casseroles no one asked for. She'd reorganize Grandma's kitchen cabinets without permission. She'd talk about how hard it must be for Grandma living alone, managing everything herself. Always with this undertone of concern that felt more like criticism. My grandmother was polite to her. Always polite. But I'd noticed over the years that she never confided in Carol. Never asked her opinion on anything important. The estate wasn't massive, but it wasn't small. A paid-off house worth about $400,000. $70,000 in savings. Her coin collection worth at least $20,000. A few pieces of jewelry, including her mother's engagement ring, an Art Deco platinum piece with a small but flawless diamond. And her library. 1,700 books she'd collected over 60 years. My grandmother had been clear about her intentions. The house gets sold and split evenly among my kids. You get the books and my mother's ring. Carol gets the coin collection because she always admired it. Your mother gets the rest of the jewelry. Simple. Fair. Explicit. I had a good job as a systems analyst. Sarah worked as a nurse practitioner. We didn't need the money. But it wasn't about money. It was about being erased by someone who smiled at the funeral while already planning to cut me out. The will reading was scheduled for 3 weeks after her death. I wasn't invited. The first sign came 2 months before she died. I'd stopped by to drop off groceries and her new prescription. It was a Thursday afternoon. Carol was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers spread out in front of her. When I walked in, she gathered everything quickly. Too quickly. The papers made a sharp sound as she swept them into a folder. I saw her glance toward the hallway toward Grandma's bedroom before she looked at me. "Just helping her organize some old files," she said. Her smile was warm. Her eyes weren't. "You know how she keeps everything." I set the groceries on the counter. "Need help?" No. Almost done here." She stood, the folder tucked under her arm. "How is she today?" "Tired. The treatment takes a lot out of her." "I'm sure." Carol picked up her purse. "I should let her rest then. I'll come back tomorrow." She left within 2 minutes. I stood there looking at the empty table. There was a coffee cup. Still warm. She'd been there a while. Long enough to make coffee. Long enough to spread out documents. But when I walked in, she couldn't leave fast enough. Later, when I mentioned it to Grandma, she looked confused. We were sitting in her bedroom. She was tired from treatment. She said, "I didn't ask Carol to do that. I keep my important papers in the safe." I let it go. People help without being asked. Families do that. Except now, looking back, I remember one other detail. When I'd walked in, my grandmother's reading glasses were on the counter. Not on her face. She couldn't read fine print without them. Those documents had fine print. I'd seen it before Carol shoved them in the folder. So what exactly had Carol been organizing? After she died, Carol took charge of everything. The funeral. The house. She said it made sense because she lived close and I had work obligations 200 miles away in Sacramento. At the funeral, Carol stood in the front row next to my mother. She cried beautifully. Everyone commented on how devoted she'd been. People kept thanking her. I stood in the back and said nothing. Afterward, at the house, Carol moved through the rooms like she owned them. At one point I saw her showing a neighbor my grandmother's china cabinet, talking about which pieces were worth keeping. I left early. I offered to help with the estate. She said she had it handled. When I asked about the books, the ring Grandma mentioned wanting me to have, Carol said she hadn't come across anything like that yet. Weeks passed. Then the lawyer's office sent out estate notices. I didn't get one. I called Carol. I kept my voice even. I said I hadn't received any paperwork. She paused, then said, "Oh, I thought the lawyer was handling all that. Let me check." 2 days later she called back. There must have been a clerical error with my address. She'd make sure I got the updated information. I never received it. When I called the lawyer directly, that's when he told me. Richard Voss. He sounded genuinely surprised. I had to ask him to repeat it. The words didn't make sense. "There must be some mistake," I said. "I don't believe so. The will is quite clear. Dated April 2023. Signed and witnessed." Who witnessed it? Pause. Papers rustling. A Carol Patterson and someone named, it's hard to read the signature. Mary or Marie something. Carol had witnessed a will that benefited her. He read me the beneficiaries. Carol Patterson. Sarah Chin, my mother. David Chin, my uncle. My name wasn't there. I asked who submitted the will to probate. He said Carol had brought it in personally. I thanked him and hung up. Sarah came in. She'd been in the garden. She took one look at my face and said, "What happened?" I told her. "Your grandmother would never cut you out. That's impossible." That's what I said. "So what does it mean?" "It means Carol did something." Sarah sat down. "Are you sure?" "I have her will. The real one. From 2020. Then we fight this." I loved her for that. No hesitation. Then I called my mother. She was shocked. She said Carol had told her this was what Grandma wanted. That there had been a falling out between us that I'd never mentioned. She said it happened last spring, my mother said slowly. That you'd argued about something. That Grandma had been hurt by it. What did we supposedly argue about? She didn't say. She said it was between you and Grandma. Mom. I visited her twice a week until she died. We talked every Sunday. When would this argument have happened? Pause. I should have asked you. Yes. You should have. I'm sorry. Her voice cracked. I should have known Carol was lying. But she hadn't asked. She just believed Carol. I sat with it for 3 days. I went to work. I came home. I had dinner. I lived my life exactly as before. But something had shifted. At night, I'd sit in my office with the envelope, reading the will over and over. Not to memorize it, but to understand what my grandmother had been thinking when she gave it to me. She'd known. That's what kept circling back. I wasn't angry. Anger makes you sloppy. Makes you reactive. Makes you send emails at 2 in the morning that you regret by dawn. I was clear. The will was dated February 2020. I checked the signatures, the dates, the notary seal. Everything was in order. George Brennan had witnessed it. The notary was Patricia Ruiz. This will was executed 3 years before the one Carol had filed. I made copies. 3 sets. I locked the original in a safety deposit box at a different bank. Then I started making calls. George Brennan answered on the 3rd ring. He was 78 now, retired, living in Scottsdale. I identified myself. He remembered immediately. I'm so sorry about Eleanor. She was a wonderful woman. Thank you. I'm calling because there's been an issue with her will. I explained the situation. He listened without interrupting. Then, I still have my files. I keep records of all my estate work even after retirement. Let me pull hers. 10 minutes later he called back. I have the copy I kept. February 2020. She was very clear about her wishes. She was concerned about certain people having access to her documents. Carol. She didn't name names. But yes, I understood her meaning. Would you be willing to provide an affidavit? Absolutely. Next I called Patricia Ruiz. She remembered the signing. She kept meticulous records, date, time, location. She'd be happy to provide documentation. Then I searched for estate lawyers in Sacramento. Michelle Park's name came up repeatedly. She specialized in contested wills. Her reviews mentioned relentless, precise, doesn't take prisoners. Perfect. I called her office. Got an appointment for the following week. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth on record. There's a difference. Michelle Park's office was in a converted Victorian in downtown Sacramento. She was in her mid-40s, sharp-eyed, with silver streaks in her dark hair she hadn't bothered to hide. She shook my hand, offered coffee, and sat down with a yellow legal pad. Tell me everything. I did. The Sunday calls. The cancer. Carol's increasing presence. The papers on the kitchen table. The funeral. The missing invitation. The phone call from Richard Voss. She took notes. Didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said, "Do you have the 2020 will?" I handed her the envelope. She read through it carefully. Checked the signatures, the notary seal, the witness attestations. This is solid. Properly executed, properly witnessed, notarized. Based on what you've told me, we have grounds for contestation. The question is what your aunt did and whether she knew she was doing it. What do you mean? There are a few possibilities. 1. Your grandmother actually executed a second will in 2023, maybe when she was confused from medication. Carol found it and submitted it in good faith, not knowing about the 2020 will. That's not what happened. I believe you. But we need to be prepared for that defense. 2. Your grandmother drafted a second will but never properly executed it. Carol found the draft and submitted it, either not understanding it was just a draft or willfully ignoring that fact. And 3. Michelle looked at me steadily. 3. Carol forged it. Either created a fake will entirely or took an old draft and altered it to look legitimate. The room was quiet except for the tick of an old clock on the mantel. If it's option 3, this becomes more than just a probate dispute. That's fraud. Potentially criminal. I want to know which one it is. Then we'll need a handwriting expert. Someone who can analyze both wills and determine if the signatures match, if anything's been altered. How long does that take? Couple weeks for a preliminary analysis. I nodded. What do we do first? Michelle smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. First, we file a motion to contest the probate. That stops any distribution until this is resolved. Second, we request copies of all estate documents. Third, we get affidavits from George Brennan and Patricia Ruiz. Fourth, we hire the handwriting expert. And fifth, we prepare for your aunt to fight back. You think she will? If she knowingly filed a fraudulent will? Absolutely. I thought about Carol at the funeral. Carol in my grandmother's kitchen. Carol gathering those papers when I walked in. She'll go far, I said. Michelle nodded. Then so will we. Michelle filed the motion to contest probate within a week. I didn't tell anyone. I just waited. Carol found out when she received the formal notice from the court. She called me at 7 in the morning on a Tuesday. Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the edge underneath. What are you doing? Correcting an error. There is no error. The will was filed properly. I have Grandma's will. The real one. Silence. Then, she changed her mind. People do that. They get old, they reconsider things. She gave me this will 4 years before she died. It's signed and notarized by George Brennan. The one you filed is dated earlier and contradicts her explicit instructions. It also removes me entirely, which she would never have done. You're being selfish. You're tearing the family apart over money. Your grandmother would be ashamed. It was a good performance. The will you filed has you listed as a witness. You witnessed a will that benefits you. That's a conflict of interest. I was helping her. She asked me to. Did she? Yes. She was confused toward the end. The medication. You weren't there. You didn't see how she was. I was there twice a week. For an hour here and there. I was there every day. I didn't argue. I just said, I'll see you in court. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from anger. From adrenaline. From the realization that Carol wasn't going to back down. Good. Let her. Sarah came into the kitchen. She'd heard my side of the conversation. You okay? Yeah. She's going to make this ugly. I know. Are you ready for that? I thought about my grandmother. About Sunday afternoons in her garden. About the way she'd handed me that envelope, matter of fact, like she was giving me a recipe. Yeah. I'm ready. Over the next 3 weeks the case came together. George Brennan sent his affidavit. 3 pages, detailed, precise. He described the meeting with my grandmother in February 2020. How she'd been clear-minded, thorough, explicit about her wishes. How she'd specifically mentioned concerns about certain family members accessing her documents. Patricia Ruiz sent hers. Shorter but just as clear. Date, time, location. She checked my grandmother's ID. She'd watched her sign. Michelle requested the full probate file from Richard Voss. He sent it without comment. The 2023 will arrived in a manila envelope. I opened it at my desk. Sarah stood behind me. It looked wrong. Not obviously fake, but something about it felt off. The paper was slightly different. Brighter. Newer. The signature looked like my grandmother's. But it was too perfect. Too careful. My grandmother's handwriting had gotten shakier in her final years. Arthritis. But this signature was smooth, controlled. Michelle sent it to the handwriting expert. Dr. Laura Chin. She was expensive, but Michelle said she was worth it. We waited. Michelle filed a motion for discovery. She requested all documents in Carol's possession related to the estate. All communications. All financial records. Carol's lawyer, Dennis Price, pushed back. The judge disagreed. She ordered Carol to comply within 2 weeks. At home, I started going through my grandmother's books. I brought a few boxes back before everything escalated. I found her notes in the margins. Questions. Arguments with the author. Little observations that made me smile. In a copy of East of Eden, I found something else. An envelope with my name on it in her handwriting. Inside was a note. Dated 3 days before she gave me the will. My dear boy. If you're reading this, then I was right about Carol. I'm sorry you had to deal with this. I'm sorry I couldn't handle it myself. But I knew you would do the right thing. You always do. That's why I trust you with this. Not because you're ruthless, but because you're fair. The books are yours. Read them. Remember me. And don't let anyone make you small. Love, Grandma. I sat on the floor of my office, surrounded by boxes of books, and cried for the first time since she died. Not because of Carol. Not because of the will. Because my grandmother had known exactly what would happen, and she protected me anyway. Sarah found me there 20 minutes later. She sat down next to me, read the note, and cried too. She really knew, Sarah said. Yeah, she did. Dr. Chin called Michelle 3 weeks later. Michelle called me immediately. The handwriting analysis came back. I was in my car, parked outside a grocery store. I turned off the engine. And? The signatures on the April 2023 will are forged. Your grandmother's signature, specifically. The pressure points are wrong, the letter formation is inconsistent with her natural writing patterns. And the date has been altered. Originally it said 2019. Someone changed the 9 to a 3. I sat there holding the phone. She forged my grandmother's signature. Yes. On a will that removed you entirely. Dr. Chin is confident enough to testify in court. I thought about Carol sitting at my grandmother's kitchen table. The stack of papers. How quickly she gathered them when I walked in. She'd been practicing. Or planning. Or both. What happens now? Now I file an amended motion. This isn't just probate fraud anymore. This is forgery. The DA might want to get involved. Good. Michelle was quiet for a moment. Are you sure? Once we make this public, there's no taking it back. Your family will know. Everyone will know. They should know. Carol tried to steal from my grandmother. She forged legal documents. Why would I protect her from that? Some people want to keep family matters private. Carol made it public when she filed that will in court. I'm just correcting the record. All right then. I'll file tomorrow morning. I drove home in silence. Told Sarah. Finally she said, "Your mom's going to be devastated." I know. This is going to break things that can't be fixed. I looked at Sarah. They were already broken. Carol broke them when she decided to forge my grandmother's signature. I'm just the one making everyone look at it. Sarah nodded. Okay. Then let's finish it. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Paneled wood fluorescent lights, the kind of space where dozens of lives get decided every day without ceremony. Carol sat 3 rows ahead of me. She was wearing a dark blue suit, pearls, her hair perfectly styled. She didn't turn around. My mother sat next to me. She'd asked to come. Judge Catherine Reyes took the bench at exactly 9 a.m. She was in her 60s, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain. She looked like she'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. She'd read everything. She asked Michelle to summarize our position first. Michelle stood. Your Honor, we're asking the court to invalidate the will currently in probate and reinstate the valid will from February 2020. The evidence shows that the April 2023 will submitted by Ms. Patterson was never properly executed and contains forged signatures. We have a certified handwriting analysis, affidavits from the attorney who witnessed the 2020 will, and documentation from the notary. The 2023 will contradicts the deceased's explicit wishes and was altered with fraudulent intent. Judge Reyes nodded. Mr. Price. Carol's lawyer stood. Dennis Price was in his 50s, balding, wearing a suit that had seen better days. Your Honor, Ms. Patterson acted in good faith. She submitted the will she found among the deceased's papers. If there's another will, we weren't aware of it. Judge Reyes looked at him over her glasses. The respondent wasn't aware that the petitioner, the deceased grandson, existed? Price shifted. We were told there had been an estrangement. By whom? By Ms. Patterson. I see. And did anyone verify this estrangement? Silence. Mr. Price, your client witnessed the will that benefits her. That alone should have raised questions. Your Honor, Mrs. Patterson was the deceased's primary caregiver in her final months. It's highly unusual for someone to witness a will that names them as a beneficiary. It's a clear conflict of interest and in most circumstances would invalidate the document. She turned to the papers in front of her. She took her time. I watched Carol's shoulders. They were rigid. Judge Reyes picked up what looked like the handwriting analysis. She read it. Her expression didn't change. Finally she spoke. The February 2020 will is properly executed, witnessed by a licensed attorney, notarized, and consistent with the deceased's expressed wishes. The April 2023 document appears to be a draft that was never finalized, and there are significant discrepancies in the signatures. Dr. Chen's analysis indicates the signature attributed to the deceased is a forgery. The date appears to have been altered from 2019 to 2023. She paused. Looked directly at Carol. I'm invalidating the April 2023 will and ordering the February 2020 will admitted to probate. I'm also ordering a full forensic accounting of all estate transactions since the date of death. Mr. Price, your client needs to understand that this court takes document forgery very seriously. I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for review. The gavel came down. Carol stood abruptly. walked out without looking at anyone. My mother sat beside me, crying quietly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have known." I took her hand. "It's not your fault." We sat there while the courtroom emptied. Judge Reyes had already moved on to the next case. Michelle came over. That went as well as it could have. What happens now? The estate gets distributed according to the 2020 will. Carol has to account for everything she's already done. And the DA will review the forgery evidence. Will they prosecute? Probably. This is pretty clear-cut. I nodded. Outside, Sarah was waiting. She hugged me. "How do you feel?" "Tired." "Want to go home?" "Yeah." Carol had already started selling off assets. She'd listed the house. She'd divided the jewelry. She'd taken the coin collection to an appraiser and accepted an offer of $18,000. She'd deposited estate funds into an account she controlled. Now she had to reverse it. All of it. The house sale was halted. The buyers walked away. The jewelry had to be returned. My mother gave back everything without question. She came to my house with a velvet bag and set it on my kitchen table. She sat down without taking off her coat. "I should have known Carol was lying. I should have known you and Mom didn't have a falling out. I talked to you. I talked to her. If something had happened, I would have seen it." I poured her tea. We sat there for a while. Finally she said, "Mom knew. Didn't she?" "Yes. That's why she gave you the will. She knew Carol would try something." "I think so. I never even asked to see the will Carol filed. I just trusted her." The coin collection was more complicated. The appraiser had already paid Carol $18,000. She had to return the money and get the collection back. She'd spent $4,000 of it. The court ordered a full accounting. Every dollar had to be traced. Carol hired a forensic accountant. It didn't help. The numbers didn't lie. She'd spent estate money on other things. A vacation to Hawaii, which she'd claimed was necessary for grief processing. New furniture for her house, justified as temporary estate storage. A lawyer consultation before my grandmother even died. That last one was particularly damning. She'd met with an estate attorney 3 weeks before my grandmother died. The consultation notes showed she'd asked about contesting wills, about what made a will invalid, about what happened if someone died without telling family members about estate plans. She'd been planning this for a while. She had to pay it back. All of it. With interest. The total came to $27,000. Carol didn't have it. She had to take out a loan against her own house. I didn't gloat. I didn't send messages or make calls. I let the process happen. Carol tried reaching out through my Uncle David. She wanted to talk things through. To settle privately. I declined. My grandmother had made her wishes clear, and I wasn't going to negotiate them away. The estate was eventually distributed according to the real will. The house sold for $420,000. After expenses, it was split evenly among the 3 children. I received the books. All 1,700 of them. I received my great-grandmother's engagement ring. Sarah wears it sometimes. My mother received the rest of the jewelry. She keeps it in a safe deposit box and hasn't looked at it since. Carol received nothing. She wasn't a child. She was a daughter-in-law. My grandmother had never intended to leave her anything. The coin collection went to my Uncle David as originally planned. He'd stayed quiet through the whole thing. 3 months after the hearing, Carol and David separated. He filed for divorce 6 months later. The DA pressed charges. Forgery, fraud, theft by deception. Carol pleaded no contest in exchange for probation, restitution, and community service. She avoided jail time, but she has a criminal record now. I haven't spoken to Carol since the hearing. Not because I'm holding a grudge, but because there's nothing left to say. She made a choice. She thought I wouldn't notice or wouldn't care or wouldn't have proof. She was wrong on all counts. The books fill one entire wall of my house now. Floor to ceiling. 1,700 volumes arranged by subject the way my grandmother had them. I was shelving the last section when I found more notes. Tucked into random books. In a biography of Eleanor Roosevelt, "Strong women make weak men nervous." In a collection of Mary Oliver poems, "Pay Attention." This is the work. In a mystery novel, not sure about the ending. Too neat. Life isn't this tidy. She was right about that. Some nights I sit in the library and pull books at random. I find her handwriting in the margins. Questions. Arguments with the author. Recipes tucked between pages. A receipt from 1987 being used as a bookmark. Her life is in these pages. Her real life. Not the one Carol tried to rewrite. That's what Carol didn't understand. You can forge a signature. You can alter a document. But you can't forge a life. You can't rewrite someone's story just because you want a different ending. The money from the house sale is in an account. I've used some of it to set up a scholarship fund at the local community college in her name, for students who are the first in their family to pursue higher education. The application asks one question: what book changed your life and why? We've funded 3 students so far. My grandmother would have loved that. My mother asks sometimes if I'll ever talk to Carol again. Family is family, she says. I understand. But some people show you exactly who they are when they think no one is watching. Carol showed me. And my grandmother had already seen it years before. There's a magnolia tree in my backyard now. I planted a cutting from my grandmother's garden the spring after everything was settled. It's small still, barely 3 feet tall, but it's growing. Sarah says it won't bloom for a few years. Magnolias are slow. Patient. That's okay. I can wait. Every Sunday at 3 p.m. I make coffee and sit in the library. Sometimes I read. Sometimes I just sit there, surrounded by my grandmother's books. I like to imagine she knows. That wherever she is, she knows I did what she asked. That I stood up for the truth. That I didn't let anyone make me small. I hope she's proud. My grandmother once told me that strength isn't about making noise. It's about knowing what matters and standing on it when everyone else tells you to let go. Carol taught me what betrayal looks like. But Grandma taught me something better. She taught me that the truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be true. And that when someone tries to erase you, the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to disappear. So what do you think? Was waiting for the evidence the right move, or would you have handled it differently? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more like it. Real people, real betrayals, and how they got justice without losing themselves in the process. Thanks for watching.